Bill's one of the top 5 most influential people in my life. You know, when I look back at how he really gave me a roadmap to shaping my personality, understanding my relationship with God and how that fit with sports, and also just baseball. You know, really a great mentor, a great knowledgeable guy that really knew the game of baseball.
I mean, the amount of years he spent in the game at every level, going from managing in the big leagues to managing independent ball after he managed in the big leagues, and then back up every level in the minor leagues, probably had every job through the minor leagues, didn't care where he was, as long as he was around the game. Those people, to me, they need to be recognized in some way.
It's been a long time. I kind of grew up in Oakland the first few years, and I knew kind of Dad played pro ball, in the old Coast League in the 20s, and then I had an uncle, Red Baldwin, that caught about 18 years in the Coast League, and I used to hear a lot of their stories about the championship year they had in Seattle in 1924. Those are really neat times, and then my dad he hurt his shoulder when he was about 26. He was a pitcher, and then stopped playing, ended up being a policeman in Oakland about 25 years. Then when we moved up here is when I had my first chance when I was 8 to really start playing Little League and playing baseball. So that's kind of where I got my start.
I met PLUM playing high school ball, and then I think playing Babe Ruth League, and then Legion ball. And Gene Parrott, who had been in the Cardinal chain, he played C and A ball with the Cardinals. He was on my Legion team. He was in his mid to late 30s, and we had 2 or 3 other guys that were in their late 30s, early 40s playing Legion ball. Our coach, Lefty Joe Hatton, he pitched for the Dodgers in the World Series, and he was a mailman in Reading. So it was great. And you know what? PLUM, he was really good, but there were a number of other people that were pretty good, and you really didn't have an idea at that point in time who was going to make it.
In those days, I graduated in '64, and they had a thing you go to as an Examiner All-Star, Northern against the South, and you played in Golden Gate Park. And so I went to all those tryouts. I didn't get a hit the whole time. Basically, they put me on the team as a third catcher or something like that, and so all the scouts saw everybody play in those days. No one really offered a contract at that time, and I just really wanted to play, and I decided just to go to JC and play there. I want to stay at home, closer to home, and. So I started at Shasta, and I really got off to a great start, hit the ball really well, and started swinging. The scout that had watched me for a long time, Al Farrell, he was kind of a bird dog for the St. Louis Cardinals, one of those scouts. He'd never really seen me get many hits, and he came down to a game. We had a doubleheader with Chico. I think I had I think I was 3 for 4 both games, and the end of March, they offered me a contract, and so we had 4 games left in our season. And I went ahead and signed with St. Louis. They offered me, gave me a nice little bonus at that time. That was a long time ago, 53 years ago. Then I went to Sarasota and when the rookie league started down there, and had a pretty good year, made the All-Star team. And George Kissel was my first manager. He taught me a lot. And then I got my chance to go to my first spring training in '67. That was probably the most excitement for me to be able to come down and do that. And I was assigned with Sparky Anderson at that time. He was managing A-ball in Modesto, and a lot of fun. I had a great year there for just playing every day. You know, it was fun to play every day, and I didn't hit very much. I had 230, maybe 11 home runs, and 55 RBIs, caught real well, threw well, and all of a sudden, in December, I was at Rule 5, and I was in the big leagues with Chicago in spring training. I was catching behind guys they were my idols for years with the Giants, Mays, McCovey, all those guys, you know, so it was pretty exciting, and it was a great time for spring training for me that time. And then, unfortunately, when the season started, I was managing with DeRocher, and, you know, I was too young, and basically Randy Hundley was there, great team, kind of stayed there, and had an at-bat once in April and one in May. I struck out and flied out, so that was my first year in the big leagues, 2 at-bats, and pretty frustrating for a young kid. I wanted to play.
The Cubs tried multiple times to send Plummer down to AAA Tacoma to get him some playing time, but each time the Cardinals would claim him. So he was stuck in Chicago on the bench, relegated to catching in the bullpen. After the season, Plummer was traded to the Cincinnati Reds, destined to back up the greatest catcher of all time, Johnny Bench. Plummer would spend the 1969 season with the AAA Indianapolis Indians. In September 1970, the Reds called him up to Cincinnati, where he would get his first major league hit.
71, I made the club as a right-hand pinch hitter. Got sent out about the, I guess, middle or end of May to Indianapolis. Had a really good year in Indianapolis, led the club in home runs and RBIs, and then the next year I made the club. So it was kind of my start of the big league career, which is, you know, it wasn't not a lot of highlights, but great teams, and very fortunate to be in 3 World Series and 2 World Championship teams.
There's a high fly ball. It should be all over. Geronimo's under, and Cincinnati has won the World Championship, beating the Boston Red Sox 4-3.
The type of job is because Sparky Anderson, our manager, keep us together on and off the field. I think I never played with a team. They were more like a family. We were together, we like each other, we talk a lot no matter who's out there in the field.
We were close-knit. You know, a lot of times after games you go out and get a drink and there'd be 15 of us in the same place, at a restaurant bar, like, you know, to get something to eat and have a drink and stuff. So, you know, we lived together on the field and off the field, very close-knit, and at this time it's hard to find clubs that get that way. The clubs that get that way win because they pick each other up, you know, and that's basically how you win. And guys have to prepare themselves and they have to play hard every day, and baseball's individual, but it's a team sport too.
And Bill kind of stood out to me because certainly he had an understanding of the guy he was playing behind. But at the same time, I realized relatively early on that he was the kind of guy that wanted to play, and wanted to play more than a couple of times a week, and play. Inevitably, he was in the lineup against really tough pitchers. You know, Bench, God bless him, was a guy that wanted to play all the time. And for the most part, Johnny would take off the second game of doubleheaders, and periodically would take a day off, you know, just to give him some rest in the heat of the summer. And that's when Bill got a chance to play. And I often felt it was really tough for him because he probably got a chance to play less than any of the other extra players on the ball club, simply because of playing behind a guy who was a lead pipe Hall of Famer, and on top of that, playing behind a guy who wanted to play as much as he physically could.
I was almost a bullpen coach at times. You know, really, Sparky showed me a lot how to handle pitchers and use guys in the bullpen. He was one of the first guys that they used to call Captain Hook. He was a quick hook with the starters. We had a great bullpen. We had 4 or 5 guys in the bullpen that were lights out, you know, kind of like what you see nowadays. So it gave me a good feeling of when to do it, when not to do it, you know, and when you needed to get more out of your starter, how to rest your bullpen, you know, those type of things, a lot of things, because basically you were around that, and I was answering the phone, telling guys to get up and when they were ready and those type of things. So that part of it helped me a lot, and then the other part was just watching Sparky, how they played the game, and the spring trainings we went through, you know, how we worked through spring trainings and all the different fundamentals and those type of things to prepare ourselves for the upcoming season.
when he's in the bullpen and somebody is ready to pitch, he go out there and tell Bench. I believe so. This guy got the best pitcher they have today is the fastball. So Johnny listened to. He uses fastball because he warmed the pitcher and the bullpen, so he knows what kind of pitching he has for the game.
He handled a pitching staff well. He called a good game. He was passionate about what he did. And let's face it, as important as Bench was in that lineup and as important as having Johnny's bat in the middle of the lineup, those times in which Bill got a chance to play, and admittedly Bill's strong suit was defense, it certainly wasn't offense, and I think part of that had to do with the fact that he didn't get to play very much. But they did not miss, I don't think, in the short term, those days in which Johnny was not in the lineup because of the offensive abilities of so many other people.
He got the tools, you know. He didn't really was a great hitter like Johnny May was, but he made contact. He was strong. If you play every day, he's going to get better. He got a good arm, good defensive catch. Strong arm. He got an arm just like Bench.
A guy like Bill Plummer, a guy like Doug Flynn, or some of the other guys that were extra players on that club, they had to do some extra things that the great players didn't do, and they did it willingly, knowing that they had to develop some kind of edge over some young guy coming in from Indianapolis or a AAA club that was trying to take their position away.
Well, every year they want to come and have a job, but they know we have 8 regular players in the lineup. So they'll find out what kind of job they're going to have. So they prepare themselves. Spring training, those players like Bill, they played a lot, so they know our pitchings. So he prepared for that season when he had the time to play when Johnny is off. He did a standing job for us because we keep Bill for that many years, 8 years to 1977. A lot of teams want to trade him, you know, but Cincinnati said no. We didn't have a backup catcher. They can do the job Billy Plummer do. Sparky love it, you know. If Sparky not like Bill, I bet you he tried to begin his career. But they know he's big, strong, work hard. They always work extra, work. So that's the guy we need in the team. Besides, we don't bring, some club bring 3 catches. To the big league, we only bring 2. Bill and Bench, because we don't need nobody else.
I remember the day, I think it was the second game of the doubleheader, they're playing the Phillies. So Bench sits, Plum plays and hits 2 jacks against Steve Carlton. And you wonder if you wouldn't have been behind Bench or you would have been with another club, what kind of career, you know, you wouldn't have had the World Series rings, but what kind of career would you have had?
In March 1978, after 8 years in Cincinnati, the Reds released Plummer. He would sign a week later with the Seattle Mariners, an organization that was just 1 year old. Out of spring training, Plummer spent 3 weeks in San Jose, the Mariners' AAA affiliate, before being promoted to Seattle, where he would play 41 games behind starting catcher Bob Stinson.
I think what Plum brought to Seattle was a veteran catcher, a veteran presence. We had a lot of young pitchers back then, a lot of guys that were their first year in the big leagues. And Plum, having caught for 7 years with the Reds, and especially having a chance to learn from one of the greatest catchers in the game in Bench, I think he brought a feeling of calmness to a lot of the young pitchers when he caught. Even though he wasn't maybe our #1 catcher, I think he even helped the catchers that we had in Seattle at that time. And there was just a feeling that this guy has been there, He's been in the World Series. He's caught some of the biggest pitchers in the game, as well as backing up maybe one of the best catchers ever. It was just that feeling that we have a very good backup catcher here in Seattle.
In 1979, Plummer would return to AAA, this time as a player-coach, playing 102 games behind the plate. Plummer was called up to Seattle in September, but didn't see the field. When the season ended, the Mariners offered him a chance to manage.
And I had a chance to go back with the Yankees and then, and play as a backup maybe, or a guy at AAA when emergency they needed somebody that got hurt, But I decided just to go in to manage and, for less money and a lot more time on the field. But
it turns out because of the knowledge he had, a lot of your best managers are ex-catchers. And so he brought a knowledge of the game into managing and coaching when he did start managing in the minor leagues.
If I'd have had to pick one guy off those clubs in those early years I was with the team that I felt one day had a chance to be a big league manager and have a life after playing, it would have been Bill Plummer. I think he was a student of the game. He paid attention to the way Sparky ran a game. And you can pick those guys out. Who has a chance and who has no chance at all. The guys that sit and watch and listen and eavesdrop on conversations involving the bench coach and the manager, or the manager and the pitching coach, they're the guys that have aspirations one day of maybe being in a similar position. And Bill Plummer was one of those guys.
Plummer's first managing job was on the backfields in Tempe, managing the Mariners Instructional League team, full of future major leaguers.
it was a good start for me to go down there and get a feel. That's where I kind of ran into Harold Reynolds, Darnell Coles, Jim Presley. A lot of those kids, they were babies at that time. They were first year out.
I look at our instructional league team where he managed one time. We had 22-man roster. I think 20 guys ended up in the big leagues.
Yeah, it was a great team. You had the likes of Alvin Davis, myself, Gene Nelson, Mike Moore, Harold, Dave Valley, to name a few. All those guys played in the big leagues, had good major league careers, so it was a great team. We ended up winning the instructional league, obviously.
That spring, the Mariners farm director, Hal Keller, assigned the rookie manager to the Single-A San Jose Missions.
So I was kind of a green rookie, managing to. That was the year I had Bud Black in the bullpen. We started off that season, really hadn't established our starting rotation and stuff like that. And Keller called me and says, "Hey, my budget, I've got to get rid of a few guys here. Why don't you maybe release?" I'm thinking about maybe releasing Bud Black. I said, "Let me start him." I said, he's never hardly pitched a couple innings for us. I still kind of like him a little bit. Let me throw him out there. He had a good start, and that was the end of that. He ended up in the big leagues for 20 years. As a manager, as manager, pitching coach, and player. Great pitcher with Kansas City all those years, and after that, he just it wasn't anything I did. It's just basically, hey, I was a rookie manager. And I said, I don't want to release him. He hadn't pitched enough. I said, let me get him out there and start. And then. Opportunity, it kind of shows you, when you do get an opportunity, you have to do something with it.
Everybody through the Mariner organization was impacted by Bill. Whether it's Dave Valley, Darnell Coles, myself, Edgar, the younger guys, you name it, he pretty much touched everybody. I thought for me, he played in such a great organization in Cincinnati. So as a guy that switch hit, I learned how to switch hit in A-ball, so I spent probably more time with Bill than anybody, because I was just learning how to hit left-handed. So he threw me BP after BP after BP, early hitting, during the game, after the game, all the time. So I spent a lot of time talking with him. Plus that rookie year in A-ball, I stole 69 bases. So he taught me about situations to run in, what were you looking for, what can you maybe pick up, because he was a former catcher. But in A-ball, you're taking young men and trying to mold them into being adults, so to speak. And I think with Bill, at that time, what he was able to do was to identify the talent and make it grow.
Systematically, as a player, your numbers, you get paid on that and those sort of things, and you got to go out and perform. But being able to get a guy over, be situationally aware, understanding the different things, as far as being a good teammate, being aware of everything and everybody, and take yourself out of it. And I think a lot of this stuff he brought with him from Cincinnati, where You know, there's always somebody starting earlier than you or getting a jump on you, so it's good to get up, get your work done, and all that. But it was preparation for what was to come. Obviously, everybody thinks they can play in the big leagues, or everybody thinks that once you get there that it's easy. I mean, it's a tough deal to get there. You know, he instilled in us that you've got to be better than the league that you're playing in to move up. And again, when you're playing in an organization like the Reds, and he did back in the day, that's hard to do.
The next season, Plummer managed the Mariners' Class A affiliate, the Wausau Timbers, with a roster that included many players who would make up the core of the Mariners in the 1980s.
What people don't realize, when you're an A-ball, the manager is the pitching coach, he's the hitting coach, he throws batting practice, he writes the reports, he's the counselor, he's the one, if you don't have food, go to his house, he's going to give you some money. There's so many other responsibilities. Today you have 2 or 3 hitting coaches, you have a pitching coach, you have a bullpen guy, they have a staff. Our staff had 3 people, 3. PLUM and our infield coach and our trainer named Radar. That's all I remember. He had to be the pitching coach, he had to be the hitting coach, he had to do everything.
In Wausau, Plummer won the Midwest League Championship with his Timbers team that would produce 8 major leaguers.
With our organization, whether it was Jim Presley, who was fiery and he'd get upset when he struck out and he'd snap, Plum was able to have a little conversation with him. Whether it was Alvin Davis, who was mild-mannered and you could say anything to Alvin, nicest guy in the world, Plum was able to have a little talk with him. Whether it was a Latin guy that spoke Spanish and he's screaming at the umpire, Bill related with people. So I think that was why he was able to move through the ladder. He was a great baseball guy, don't get me wrong, because he was very knowledgeable, but he also was a great communicator with people. And when you communicate and you throw that combination together, yeah, you're going to move through the organization. So when I look back at Bill Plummer, and you look at Orlando Mercado, Dave Valley were the catchers, Dave Henderson, you look at Spike Owen, myself, Alvin Davis, Jim Presley, Mark Langston, you go through the whole organization, Edgar Martinez, all the way through, Bill Plummer had an impact on every guy that came through.
After 2 years as the bullpen coach in Seattle, Plummer returned to managing, this time in Tennessee with the Double-A Chattanooga Lookouts, where he would manage a hard-working 22-year-old third baseman named Edgar Martinez.
Yes, Bill Plummer meant a lot to me. He played a big role in my career. You know, he was my manager in Double-A, Triple-A. I learned a lot about how to play the game. He was a good teacher of the game, and he wanted the players to play the game the right way. The fundamental of the game, he was very good about teaching the fundamentals of the game.
Well, I mean, Edgar was a great kid. I mean, he worked hard. You know, I go back to him to Double-A in Chattanooga, you know, where when guys were out at the pool and he's swimming and stuff, he was upstairs in the weight room pumping iron, you know, and sweating 100, you know how the humidity is in Tennessee and stuff. And, you know, he was that type of dedication, you know, and he hit 250 with 10 home runs and maybe 50, 60 RBIs. Didn't get a chance to come to AAA that year, and I think he was really angry at me, and which I don't blame him, but a lot of times you don't have control of that, you know, and kids don't realize that sometimes. And then the next year when he came, he, you know, just crushed the league. One of the best hitters I've ever seen, right-handed, you know.
In hitting, you know, he used to teach us to use the whole field. We used to take a lot of practice, early hitting. So during the early hitting sessions, he will take the time to teach us and how to play the game, how to approach hitting, and to me, it was very beneficial.
And it's a process that you're teaching guys, instead of go get the ball, let the ball come to you, and you're hitting against one side against the other, and that's how you create that torque and power to hit the ball deeper and harder the other way and stay up the middle, right center, left center. And that's kind of what you do. And then we use the inside pitch to teach you that that's a ball pitch you just release, let everything fly, you know. So that way your hand's free and you have a chance to hit it. Yeah, well, he was one of those guys who was able to do that. I mean, he could hit balls down the right field line and left field line. Wherever it's pitched, he hit it, you know, and that's a lot easier said than done. That was Edgar. That's why he's in the Hall of Fame. Not too many people there.
In the winter of 1986, Plummer was given his first chance to manage winter ball in the Caribbean, taking the helm of the Caracas Leones.
When you go to winter ball, you're at hand, and the idea there, if you don't win, you're fired after the first month. So you try to put people in the right position where they can have more success for them and us.
After winning the Venezuelan League Championship, Plummer returned to AAA Calgary to manage for 2 more seasons before being promoted to bullpen coach in Seattle, midway through the 1988 season. A year later, Plummer would move to coaching third base, where the Mariners were able to utilize his intricate signs that so many players on the team had learned in the minor leagues, playing for Plummer.
Well, our whole style was based on the Big Red Machine, all the way down to our signs. I'll never forget him. He's a guy that made me learn how to study signs. And as you went on along the way, nothing has ever been as difficult as Bill Plummer's signs. And I'll never forget it, even to this day, he had a roving indicator. All right, so the first inning, it could be at the chest, second inning was the leg, third inning was the other leg, fourth inning was the other side of his chest. Wherever he touched, that was to start it, and then he'd lock it in, and if he had on a day game and he had sleeves, he could take it off on any skin that he touched. I mean, it was complicated. And so the first inning was an indicator, the second inning was a different indicator, the third inning, it rotated depending on the inning. I mean, Bill instilled that type of thinking in you that everybody else's signs along the way were simple. And he would fine us if we didn't know those things. So I could discern signals like that because Bill Plummer had taught me so many different ways of discerning what signs look like, whether it was behind the plate or in a third base box. I could be in the big leagues and be at second base and watch the third base coach give signs. I'd be like, he slowed down right there. I think this is their still sign. I got it, guys. I go back in the dugout because I was able to do that. And that started in A-ball. And that was all from Bill Plummer.
The 10th manager in the Mariners' 15-year history has seen or worked with all 9 of his predecessors. Bill Plummer has been with the organization for 14 of those 15 years and served most recently as the team's third base coach under Jim Lefevre. And after this past season, Plummer knows he'll be expected to win. This will be a popular choice, not only among the people who watch the Mariners, but more importantly, the people who play for them.
Well, we fought for him to be the manager. You know, when they were talking about a managerial change, we were like, Bill Plummer's perfect. Because he gave us the freedom to play that style of ball again that most of us were accustomed to.
Playing in 1992 in Seattle with him after, you know, being my manager in AAA and AA, the same for Harold Reynolds and Dave Valley. Playing for him in Seattle was, we were very excited because we knew Plummer well, and he knew us. He knew what we could do in the big leagues, and that was very helpful to have him there.
He was the right guy. We didn't perform, and that 92 team just wasn't ready. If you see 93 and you see moving forward, that was the foundation that was laid from that ball club, and I wish we could have put it together when Bill was managing it.
Our team didn't play well. You know, we didn't have good pitching. And for myself, I had a great year. I won the batting title in 1992. So I was having a good year, but the team, it wasn't good. Fielding, I didn't have a good year fielding and third base, and even I tried the best to improve that year. I didn't feel well, but the hitting was really good.
I was a veteran guy, and I was pretty much set in my ways. I think the thing that I really appreciated was he just let me be me. You know, he didn't try to force me to do anything out of the norm. I think he appreciated me for the player that I was. I think the thing that and I've said this quite often about guys that I played for, there were certain guys that I took certain things away from and tried to incorporate those things in my own abilities to manage and relate to players with. And he's one of those guys. I thought he was very even-keeled, wasn't a guy that, you know, was a yeller and a screamer, and he was just very level-headed. He was very self-assured. He was very approachable. I always felt confident that I could go up and talk to him about anything. And, you know, him being an ex-catcher, we could bounce things off one another. So, you know, from that standpoint, that's the kind of manager that really I wanted to try to become. I wanted to become a guy that my players appreciated, did not feel threatened by, that enjoyed playing for, and that they felt like they could come up to me and talk to me about anything. I wanted them to come to the ballpark and enjoy the experience. You know, it shouldn't be like, you know, you feel like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders when you come to the ballpark. So I think that's the way that he created his environment and how he wanted his players to feel when they came to the ballpark. And I enjoyed that, to be quite honest with you.
So, you know, like I say, that's when you lose this many ball games, that's what you get hired for. You get hired to get fired sometimes. And it's basically you're here to win. And like I say, it's been discouraging on that side of it, but on the other hand, you know, I've enjoyed a lot of it. I just didn't enjoy it from the sixth inning on, most of the ball games.
The biggest thing in baseball is that Woody Ward and the Mariners gave me my first opportunity to manage in the big leagues, and I'm forever grateful to them. It's unfortunately, it was only 1 year, lost 98 games, and that's kind of the way it goes. And
I mean, why you would hold a manager accountable for the kind of year they had and give him 1 year and never look back again is hard for me to understand, and he's certainly not the only one that's ever happened to.
When I look back at Bill Plummer, his biggest impact and the fingerprints that he put on the Mariner organization were helping shape a young organization. You know, think about it. The Mariners came in '77. You know, I'm talking about Bill Plummer managing me in 1980. That's an organization that's 3 years old, and the foundation is still being laid. And so Bill Plummer had a big part to do with what happened in '95 that started back in 1980.
After his departure from Seattle, Plummer joined the expansion Colorado Rockies. He ran their minor league camp in spring training and was the Rockies' rookie league pitching coach when the season started. He ended the season in Denver after being promoted to his third stint as a major league bullpen coach, a position he would hold for one more season. In 1995, the Detroit Tigers would bring Plummer back to the dugout when he was assigned to manage the Double-A Jacksonville Suns. That fall, the Tigers manager, Buddy Bell, and the front office wanted #1 pick Phil Nevin to learn how to catch, and Plummer was given the task of converting the third baseman and taking him to Jacksonville, where he would be the starting catcher.
well, that started with Buddy Bell. He was the manager, you know, that year, and I was in spring training with him, basically just, you know, helping out. And then when I was going to manage Jacksonville, and since I was there, they wanted him to go out maybe the first couple months and just catch, and then things worked out, and we thought it was good enough to go up as a third catcher at that time and try to learn all the parts of the game. And he got to catch 30 to 40 games, which 50 games is a lot of games. You know, it gave him an idea to be able to handle himself, blocking balls, throwing games. Just the whole idea of how hard a work it is to catch. But he could hit. He was the best hitter I had there, I tell you that.
I hadn't caught ever, but for me it was probably the best opportunity to stay in the big leagues, or even maybe something I would do in the future. I hadn't really hit as projected right away at the major league level, but it was something that I just considered a challenge and might be fun, and it was both. You know, to start off with just in the bullpen catching pitchers' sides. We did some drills. You know, it helped. It helped my hands, and you know, he was good with the mechanics of catching. We worked well together. He just had a way of, you know, explaining things that made sense. I think that's why he was such a good instructor as far as, you know, working with the catchers, and something he loved doing, and you could tell. So when you're you know, learning something new and you're around somebody that really loves to teach, you know, you can see that being fed to you, and it makes you better.
You start seeing the ball better when you catch. It never helped my hitting, but I mean, it sure helped his.
You know, it certainly made me a better hitter. Yeah, it did. It kept me in the big leagues for one, but I think that the mental part of it and understanding a little more of the intricacies of pitching, and I think it helped when I went back out and played in the field, and you know, my bats were better, my thoughts during at-bats were better, my understanding of how pitchers were trying to get hitters out were better. I really enjoyed it, I really did. I liked going back there, I liked working with the pitcher before the game, loved calling the game. Didn't like the little, you know, nicks and bruises and stuff like that. And you know, once I was done with it and playing in the field, and you know, like I said, I think it made me a better hitter. So once that was accomplished, I really, you know, I kind of, you know, you kind of get a better appreciation for what those guys go through each day, and I certainly had that.
Despite his work with Nevin that contributed to his promotion back to Detroit, and a more than 100-point improvement in Nevin's Major League batting average, and winning the Southern League first half championship, the Tigers front office fired Plummer during the All-Star break. Within a month, the Reds picked Plummer to manage their Rookie League Billings Mustangs for the second half of the season. After the season, Plummer returned to Northern California and accepted an offer to build and manage the first professional baseball team in far Northern California in over 40 years, the Chico Heat, an expansion team in the independent Western Baseball League.
Chico was a brand new expansion team in the league, and they hired PLUM to manage the club, and basically he had to go out and find a pitching coach. So he called me up, interviewed me, offered me the job, and we had to go out and basically build a team together. He did most of the work. We had no players, so it was starting basically from scratch. Go build yourself a team. And I'd like to say that mainly Bill put together a great team. And then I obviously handled the pitching, and we didn't have a hitting coach that year. It was just basically Plum and I.
And they were all the Heat needed. After entering the playoffs with a .500 record, the underdog Heat surprised the league, winning the 1997 Western Baseball League Championship.
Haggy swings, it's a fly ball to center field, this should end it. Ryan is under it, and he makes the catch for the out. The ball game is over.
Great feeling. It's a great accomplishment to have your own club, build your own ball club, and then have them win.
Up, and I've hugged every one of them tonight, and I can't tell you how excited I am.
Yeah, that was it was great to win. It was probably unexpected, but I think deep down we expected it, you know, because he's a fiery competitor, and you know I'm a competitor. I don't know about as fiery as Plum, but I get there at times for sure. Yeah, it was just a great season for us. You know, we were kind of the underdog sleepers. We had a great town in Chico, California to work for.
Yeah, when we ended up 500 that year, but we got hot at the end. We made a few trades, and they kind of all clicked. You know, we've got a shortstop, third baseman, and Joe Dolly turned it on at the end as his closer. He threw 90 plus. He signed with Atlanta and pitched with Atlanta in the big league. So, you know, it was all fortunate, and things went well. You know, just at the end, and we ended up going to Reno. We won it on the road up there, and it was just one of those great years. It happens. And then the next few years, we lost in the playoffs. We were 60-30 and something like that. Great teams, better teams, but you know, sometimes you run into a club hot at the end of the year, and that's all it takes. But it was a fun year. A great place, and you know, rest his soul. Steve Nettleton passed away, but he was a great influence. Bob Lynchide, all those guys. I mean, it was probably one of my funnest times. And at times, you know, you had to build the club, you had to negotiate salaries. They took care of the paperwork for me, but it was a fun experience.
After 3 seasons in Chico, Plummer again answered the call to build a Western Baseball League franchise. This time, Southern Arizona's expansion Yuma Bullfrogs. That winter, Plummer returned to Venezuela to manage the Aragua Tigres. In Aragua, Plummer moved a 19-year-old Miguel Cabrera from shortstop to third base and brought the Tigres to the Venezuelan League Championship game. After one more summer in Yuma, Plummer returned to affiliated ball with the Arizona Diamondbacks, where he would help mold the career of a 17-year-old catcher named Miguel Montero.
You know, Miguel Montero, well, we had him about 17 years old in the Diamondback system, and man, the work that Plum did with him and basically, you know, helping him out with the career that he's had is, I don't think there's anybody else that Miggy can say taught him more about the game of baseball and catching.
He was the game changer in my minor league career for me to see and to get to the big league, because he made me realize how important catching was. I feel like I always was capable of hitting, and he told me that. He's like, you can hit, you're gonna hit, but what I want you to do is to catch. You gotta forget about if you don't get hits, or if you get hits, you have to just worry about catching and calling the game, and you know, the reality is that, like, if you hit, you're gonna make it to the big league. And that was my mind. He's like, I gotta hit, but yeah, you might make it, but maybe you're not playing long enough in the big league. Because I remember he told me exactly like this: number one for catchers is catching, number two for catchers is catching, and number three for catchers is keep catching. I was like, man, when is it gonna be about hitting? It's like, never. You guys gotta catch. And I remember guys saying, they're like, oh man, Plum is, I guess you don't like it, or I don't know, because he's always in your ass, just like pushing you, and I'm like, man, that's not because he doesn't like me. That's because he wants me to get better. Because it was times where I went 3 for 3, and he'd be calling me to the office because I didn't block one ball, and he was just like, you gotta block that ball. You know, like, he will get on me hard though, and I'd be like, oh my God, I thought I had a really good game.
And the other thing is, you saw him, he put the ball in play all the time. Curveballs, changeup, fastballs, you know, he swung at everything. But I mean, he's just a young Latin that came over there, and, you know, and he busted his butt. He played hard, hustled, had a great arm, really good hands, great hands. Those are the things, when I see those type of things, and he's a left-hand hitter as a catcher, those are all pluses for me, you know. And it took me a year or so to get it. By the time I got him in A-ball, and again, I had him in rookie ball, you know, and then I had him in Lancaster, he went off, you know. I mean, he had like 20-some home runs at half. He did everything that year. I mean, he had like 90 RBIs, 80 RBIs, and they kept holding him there because they wanted him to get through the Futures game and then go up to Double-A.
So I remember one time we were talking about, and I say to him, man, you know, like, seeing other catchers, like first-rounder guys that will sign, I'm like, man, that catcher got $3 million signing bonus. Plum, he's like, don't worry about it. You're gonna make a lot more than that. And I'm like, man, I wish, you know, like, I don't even know if you're gonna make it to the big league, you know, at that point.
You know, and it was I think that was probably the first time I told him, I said, you know, you're gonna play in the big leagues and you're gonna make a lot of money. So, and he says, you know, no one's ever told me that. And I said, well, I'm telling you now, you're gonna do it. I've seen a lot of catchers come through and a lot of young players. I said, just stay focused like you do, enjoy the game. He loved the game, see, he had fun.
And to me, like, honestly, like, Plum was like my father in the U.S. Like, everything, anything, like, if he hadn't played for him, he was the first guy that I called when I got called up to the big league. And that's what probably made him a good coach that he was, a great coach, because he was capable of learning every player and knowing how to approach every player to make him better. And that's what he did for many, many years. And you know, he managed it and he coached a lot of superstars in his career. And then I got to the big league, and I wasn't catching every day. And I remember I remember Bill calling me and say, "Hey, be patient. You're fine. You're an everyday guy. Your chance is about to come. So stay strong. Keep practicing. Keep doing your things." I've been through a lot of tough times in my career, a lot of good times in my career. We kept that relationship pretty good, and that's great. It's not many players that keep a relationship like that with coaches.
So I mean, you don't run into too many people like that you coach. You know, I mean, you do things at the time, and in their life they're working from here A-ball, and once they get to A-ball, they're looking at the Double-A manager, and not you at the A-ball man. Which basically that's what we want them to do, to keep moving, you know, and work their way up to the big leagues. So they have that opportunity to do that.
Plummer managed his way back to Triple-A, spending 2 years at the helm of the Tucson Sidewinders. In the fall of 2008, after his second season in Tucson, Plummer, who had always gravitated to the catchers at spring training, was named the roving catching coordinator for the Diamondbacks organization, where he flew around the country coaching all of the Diamondbacks minor league catchers.
I remember tons of sessions of standing around talking to young catchers and things he was able to instill upon them, and then watch them go out and execute, all the different things that he put into play. It was, when you first start, everybody plays and then they all think they can coach, but you know, it's not that easy. And then so I was able to watch him, see how they, understood the message, and then watch them go out and execute. And that's how I learned how to coach as well.
What I took out a lot from him, from Plum, is the fact that everybody's their own individual. He taught them to be the best that they can be, and it wasn't really cookie cutter. It's not cookie cutter. It's not, here's the mold, you got to follow it. Boom, you got to do it this way. He would tailor it to who that person was, and that's kind of the approach that I've taken as far as being a pitching coach now, is tailoring it to them, and how do I get the best out of that person. And
he was a great inspiration for me because he taught me really what a coach was all about. He was fair to all the kids, whether you're a #1 pick or you were a free agent signing from a small school somewhere. He wanted everybody to be treated the same way.
He would let them know, like I seen big leaguers and they were just showing up and being cocky. He let him know. He's like, hey, you're not gonna do that here, come on. Show these guys up that you're big league players, Show them the right way.
In December 2011, Plummer took over the managerial duties of the Hermosillo Naranjeros of the Mexican Pacific League, turning the team around and bringing them to the playoffs. The Diamondbacks saw this and moved Plummer back to the dugout, where he would manage the single-A Visalia Rawhide.
David Peralta's in the big leagues. He had him. Here's a kid that came out of independent ball.
I remember the first time when I met him, when I came back from the independent ball in high A. He was my first manager in high A. And I mean, he was a great guy. He came to me, introduced himself, like, hey, David. And the funny thing, that day he told me, hey, you're gonna play, but they were waiting for my contract, sign the approval for the MLB. So he told me, hey, you're not playing right now, but if we get the contract before the game started, you're gonna be playing. I was like, okay, I'm ready. I was so excited because it was my first day. And it was funny because 30 minutes before the game the game was about to start, he said, hey, you're gonna play, David. You ready? You're gonna be playing right field and everything. I'm like, okay, I was really excited, but I mean, that was, he was like doing a little bit of everything. He was like talking to you, like good communication, and he always was really patient with me because he knew it was like, for me, it was a big process coming from the independent ball.
We got him from independent team. He hit the ball harder than anybody we had in the team, maybe in the league. I mean, maybe not for distance yet. And he had a lot of trouble because he didn't see very good left-handers. He just already went from a pitcher and then went independent as a hitter.
And I really appreciate it from him because he gave me the opportunity. Because I remember when I won my first game, I went 3 for 4, and then I went like 0 for 11. But he was putting me in the lineup every day and believing in me, and he was one of those guys when I got to call to the big league, and then I saw him that year later. He was really excited, and I was really excited from him too because he was part of the opportunity that I needed to be where I am right now.
David Peralta, he said, this guy's gonna play in the big leagues. He said, I love the swing. He goes, this swing's a major league swing. I still remember that. And this is back when he was in Visalia.
From how he hit right-handers, and how hard he hit the ball, and how hard he played, you see those things and you say, you know what, if he continues, and he went to winter ball every year and played, so he did the right things to get there. A great kid too, and he loved the game too, kind of like Mingy. He's a rah-rah, play the game hard.
But he could see stuff like that, and only him, from the years of experience and his eyes seeing so many things, he could say stuff like that. And it was fun. It was fun to watch, fun to talk, pick his brain, because it was a lot of experience that us as younger coaches at the time, we need to listen to that because those guys have been around a lot longer than we have. Those guys have seen a lot more stuff than we have.
At the end of the season, Plummer retook the reins of catching coordinator, where he would spend his final 4 seasons with the Diamondbacks.
At the end of the day, he's trying to help you. Because when you come to the big leagues, it's all about wins and losses. That's what basically it is. Yeah, in the minor leagues, you're developing, you're trying to create a great atmosphere, trying to get them as best as you can. When they get here, they're ready to play in the big leagues. But when you come here, one thing matters, it's the wins. And I think that's what he taught us, and I think he learned that from coming up, I guess, early on in his career with the St. Louis Cardinals. George Kissel, I think that was a guy, his mentor, a tough guy, but man, he was fair and he treated everybody the same. And I think he had a little bit of that, George Kissel in him. And I think he brought that to us here, that when he came here, all of a sudden, I think we as an organization in the minor leagues, we started winning. So that's something to say about Bill Plummer.
I think for him, playing for those teams that won, there's a right way to win and there's a way to have fun when winning. And I think that's what that team did, those teams he was on, and that's what he tried to bring to us is there's a right way to do it. When you do it the right way, you can have fun doing it. The catchers who have come through here, the careers they've had, even guys who maybe aren't playing in the big leagues for the D-backs, but we're under Plum and we're able to, have him as a coach and really learn and understand from him. And, I think for a guy like him, 50 years in the game, 15 years with us, your resume kind of speaks for itself.
He was a great soul to have in the clubhouse, a great presence here every day. He was a one-of-a-kind guy. Plum's name's always talked about. He's going to be a guy that lives forever around here.
I was happy just working and managing the minor leagues. I loved to manage, always had that opportunity. Was fortunate enough to manage a couple of years in Caracas, Hermosillo, and so those are always great experiences for me. And so I look back and I'm very thankful for what baseball's given me. It's a great career and a lot of great times. And I met a lot of great people in the game, and there's been a lot of people that helped me all along the way, as a player, as a manager, as a coach. A lot of things that you learn by experience doing things the wrong way sometimes too. And, and sometimes you get opportunities to, to do it again, and sometimes you have to go look for another job when it doesn't work out. But that's kind of life.
The thing is that a lot of times the minor league coaches, they don't get the recognition they deserve. You look at every major league player, they came through a system and they were brought up by not the major league coaches. Everybody thinks you get there, they should be a finished product and all that, but they don't give much credit to the guys that developed them and made them better. And guys like Bill, they should be recognized a little more. I know he was, he's gotten a couple of awards within the Diamondback system, probably others. But like I said, his passion and his energy, those are things that the common fan doesn't look into and see. You come to a major league game and you see guys do things well, they don't think, wow, they must have had a good minor league coach. Well, that's usually the case. You come to the big leagues, there's still some teaching involved, but your skill set and the things you learn through the minor leagues and how it's applied at the big league level is mostly coming from your rovers that are down there working with these guys every day through seasons, through instructional leagues, through early spring trainings and early work and throughout the entire time you're doing those things. And those are the rovers and the minor league coaches and managers that put in that time and energy with those players to make them what they are on the field in the big league level.
So many people that just had a great effect with you, and Joel Youngblood, who's I was able to play with and then coach with for so long, made such a big difference to be able to have friends with you. The biggest thing about baseball is when you're coaching and you have coaching staffs and stuff, you want to become friends or have friends that are on your staff with you, so it makes your job much easier, much more satisfying. And you give the kids credit. People always say, well, they just say, oh, he did everything. Well, I didn't do anything for him. I never played or hit for those guys at all. The players that get there, they do it. We're here to try to show them the best way to get the most out of their abilities and stuff like that. And a lot of things you say the same thing to everybody else. It's the ones that are able to take it and apply it and have success with it. And baseball's hard. I mean, hitting a baseball is really tough. There's just, in the lifestyle and in the minor leagues, there's just a lot of things that you have to really love the game to stay in it. That's basically what it comes down to. If you don't love it, you won't make it.
Well, all you gotta do is turn the TV on. There's two guys that really, I think, had the biggest baseball knowledge influence on me. That was Bill Plummer and Dick Williams. And so when I'm breaking down games, I'm talking about situations on TV, those two have taught me a lot, how to see the game as a manager would see it. And I think if you look around, you got Spike Owens still doing his thing, coaching in the big leagues. Alvin Davis is coaching with the Mariners as a roving instructor. Mark Langston's broadcasting with the Angels. Dave Valley broadcasts here at MLB Network. You know, you can go on and on. Jim Presley was the hitting coach in the big leagues for a long time. Darnell Cole's the hitting coach. So I think anywhere you look, you can kind of see Bill's handprints that he's had a lot of guys he influenced along the way.
Well, I think a legacy of winning. I mean, he has multitude of world championship rings and an attitude that allows you to have a belief in yourself, to trust yourself, to trust your own instincts, but to work at it. I think there's a work ethic that comes with that, and that you can't walk away from. I think you can't cheat the process. He wasn't going to allow us to cheat it. And at the end of the day, it made us better players. I know it made Harold a better player. I know it made me a better player. And I'm sure it made the other players that were around us much better as a group.
And, I really love managing, love working with the kids, love working with the coaches. And it just got to the point where it was kind of your lifestyle. And I was very fortunate to stay in it that long. I probably managed maybe 2,500 or more games, maybe 3, you know. So it was really a good life. I kind of look back at it and it goes so fast.
What it says about him is the incredible passion and the incredible love he had for the game of baseball, that he would go down and manage in Mexico or manage in the minor leagues for year after year after year and never give up, but continue doing it. There aren't too many guys, especially today, there are not too many guys. Maybe back in the old days, there are guys that would do it, but you're not going to find too many guys that would devote that much of their lives to doing what he did season after season.
So, I mean, I don't think you spend that much time in this game unless, one, you love it, and then you also don't spend that much time in this game unless other people value what you bring to the game. And so for that many years, there was a lot of value that people knew he brought and also a lot of love. So I think, you know, he leaves the game with his legacy being that every year for 53 years, I played, coached, and managed this game the way that it should be played.
You know, I don't think they give him enough credit to what he did for the game. Simple as that. Like, and that's a problem. That's the problem that I have nowadays with all these analytics and all these. You know, we need a sophisticated catching coach to teach you guys how to frame. What does that mean? I mean, I really don't get it. I don't think they appreciate like what a lot of, like him and a lot of other coaches done for the game, because they're older and they like the old school, which I love the old school baseball too. And they teach your kids to be tough. They teach you guys to be tough and play the game tough. And you know, how many big league players went through his hands? I mean, like a lot of guys. But nobody sees the coach. It's like if you go to Harvard for a reason, right? Because you had a really good teachers. They teach you well, but nobody care about the teachers. They just care about, oh, you're a lawyer now. So I think it's underrated education and coaches. Why? I don't know, because they're not on the big screen, I guess. And that sucks. Because we had the talent, but we didn't know how to play the game. So what are you going to do with the talent not knowing how to play the game? When they teach you, that's when everything just comes differently. And they should be better paid. They should be appreciated better, and they should give them credit for what they do for us. So we wouldn't have done anything without them.
To my managers, coaches, thank you all. Jeff Scott, Greg Malbert, R.J. Harrison, and Bill Plummer. Thank you for teaching me the fundamentals of the game during my minor league years.
Probably what I miss the most right now from not being in it is watching some of the kids you've had in the past and see how much they start to gain and how much better they play. And you're starting to see kids make that move that not all of them do, but it's a hard road to get from rookie ball to the big leagues. But when you're around those kids and you see them, you're so happy for them to get that opportunity. That's about it in a nutshell, those 53 years.